Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to San Francisco Playhouse. Our welcomes are a little unusual these days. We have our weekly television shows. I never thought I would be in television, but here we are with a Monday night and a Thursday night television series. And tonight's series is our Thursday evening fireside chats with some of America's and the Bay Area's greatest playwrights. We've had so many wonderful conversations with playwrights. I want to say also, I'd like to say a big thank you and let the Ohlone people know how honored I feel to be working on the land that they found and pioneered and stewarded so beautifully for so long, and from which all of us have benefited from their presence here and their pioneering spirit. We're very grateful and excited about being on the Ohlone land. Yeah, we've had a lot of great playwrights. We think of our theater as the empathy gym, and I think of playwrights basically as the prophets of our time. Playwrights are people that have much more sensitive antenna than the rest of us, and they're able to pull down information from the tumult of too much information and somehow sort it out and turn it into a story that helps us, makes it easier for us to see ourselves. We can't see ourselves. We're sort of blind to who we really are. And we look to our playwrights for a vision of who we are. I'm really thrilled tonight because we have a playwright with us who we worked with just a few weeks ago in one of our Monday night Zoomlets, Cleavon Smith, who is the playwright for Two Friends, a Toothbrush, and a Sense of Urgency, a truly intriguing title. And we had a wonderful time working on that play. And I'm thrilled to welcome Cleavon Smith to our Fireside Chats.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yeah, holding up in our orange smoke-filled Armageddon here, it's like...
Right. I guess that's, I have to preface that, I'm doing great because I am feeling like the title, a sense of urgency with all that's happening around us.
It seems like it's getting a little biblical.
It is. So each day I hear from other people who are reaching out, extending, thoughts, extending empathy, expressing solidarity. So it's an interesting flip of the mess that's surrounding us.
It does seem to have lifted the level of brother and sisterhood.
Yes.
Around the country for those of us in the Bay Area. And of course, I think, the George Floyd murder and all of the coming events following that and the revolution now taking place in American theater is also, I think, raised the empathy level a lot.
Yes,
or
indeed.
Is in the process of raising that empathy level.
Right, and I guess I think it's opened a window for sure, opened some doors through which then we have to bring ourselves fully and continue the conversation.
Right. It's like that, we got woke, I think we all got woke, and I think that makes me feel like we just have a great opportunity.
Yeah, it's funny. I think this might be the first time I've ever done this outside of being a parent, but I'm going to quote a line from another play I had done, and it goes like, "Just because you heard the alarm, it doesn't mean you're woke." It's so
truer words have seldom been spoken than that. That's true.
And so it's part of our responsibility.
It's like we were talking a little bit before we came on about apprenticeship and how, and we're all in the apprenticeship of an awakening, right?
Yes.
We're we're in the learning phase of what that means to be awakened.
Yes. And we have to kind of also embrace that fact that we're in our learning phase. As much as we want to see ourselves and much as we want to hold ourselves accountable to being beyond that, but then we start shutting off those messages from other people that we haven't quite heard from and taken in. Yeah.
Totally. We just have to listen, and we have to be vulnerable and open.
Right.
Not afraid to take one on the chin now and then.
Yeah, we have to be theater goers.
Well, we're struggling in that department right now.
Right. But I think
there's of course the pandemic too, I mean
right. I guess what I mean by that though is, and that's something that Graham Smith, who I think is, another one of those Bay Area gems. One of the things he told me when I worked with him a couple of years ago was theater is this place where we can hold the difficult conversations. We can model that.
Right.
And I think I may have mentioned that the last time because I mentioned it in every conversation when I'm talking about like what I find is really invigorating and hopeful and inspiring about theater. And so, as you were saying earlier, we have to listen. And I think that going back to what Graham was saying was like, that's theater teaches us to listen. And so, yeah, I'm just making that connection as you were talking earlier.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. I love what you said tell us a little bit more about the idea of apprenticeship in terms of playwriting.
Right. So when I was in grad school, I went to Mills in their MFA program. And one of my first professors there, Cornelia Nixon, just welcomed us all to embrace this idea that we're in an apprenticeship and got to put our 10,000 hours, our 10 years in. And just to alleviate some of the pressure of getting everything right the first time, to really impress upon us the importance of just working hard and studying. And that she told us that in the first 2 weeks of grad school, and it just relieved me so much. I had this urgency. I had to like prove that going to grad school was the right thing to do. I had to prove it by producing, and so I think that's what I took from it, and then it's also what I try to bring to playwriting, because I haven't been playwriting but for around 8 or 9 years.
So you told me a couple of other things about some of your beginnings, and you mentioned that you were raised Catholic in Mississippi and was in the Navy. That's definitely a part of your life that's formed. In which ways have those things helped form your voice, your place of birth, your experience in the military, your religion or religious beginnings anyway?
Yeah. Ooh, how did it form my voice? I think one of the things it did, it keened my eyes. It really keened my eyes, to something that's really intimate and valued as religion in the South. My dad was Catholic, my mom was Baptist, and so to go to Catholic Mass each week and then go to the services at my mom's church, and to see the sincerity expressed in both venues and how differently they were expressed, and to feel, and I felt a presence in each one of those spaces. So I think that experience really opened me up to really look for how other people see the world, experience the world, and to value it, and to like investigate it and see what's so marvelous that they see. And then I think growing up in Mississippi, you grow up with storytellers. You grow up with music, and the story told through song or told through prose. And then going in the Navy, I experienced in the Navy that I went I was in Japan. My first duty station was in Japan, and being there and being among other expatriates, and then also seeing how Americans were viewed.
Right.
And as we went up and down, the Pacific Ocean, and just seeing these really wonderful exchanges of humanity, just like, oh, like people aren't always represented by their governments. Television in Hollywood never represents people well or accurately. And so being in the Navy kind of opened me up to like, oh, wow, I can't really just take everything that other people are saying about folks as, as their truth. And it gave me this hope in humanity, because everywhere I went, people would just give you the shirt off their back if they needed to.
Always good people.
Yeah, everywhere. Yeah. So all those really kind of help shaped my voice, because it shaped my urgency to tell stories and have my characters. I'm not trying to tell other people, other cultures' stories, but at the same time acknowledging that my world is bigger than my living room.
Sure.
And so in all those ways, I guess it's kind of shaping my voice.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. When was the first? How close can you track your desire to tell stories on stage to a incipient moment, or a play you saw, or a story you wanted to tell, or school, or where did it? How did it form itself into the kernel of your mind that you wanted to be a playwright?
So it was actually watching a film with Bernadette Quattrone, who was a classmate of mine from the academy, and she was also a member of Impact when I moved out to the Bay Area.
Uh-huh.
And afterwards, I started talking and saying things about like,
Yeah.
yeah, you know that you were when I was.
We had to take a little commercial break there. But of course, you didn't get a commercial. You just got the joys of Zoom. Zoom strikes again. Anyway, we were talking about that moment when you decided to write a play. And Bernadette,
Did you? She kind of challenged me. And so then, I was going to see her perform. I was going to see her in different plays. I just never saw myself writing the material that was being performed. And then I went to, and I think it was Impact. They did Othello. It was in the basement of Laval's, and they did it with Skylar. Skylar was the Othello.
Tyler, yeah.
And because Bernadette was in the show, I just listened a little bit more closely. And it was just right there that I'm like, oh, the stories I've been wanting to tell through prose, the voice I wanted to project, I just heard it right there. That's the place. That is definitely a place.
I think Laval's is the perfect place for that piece of inspiration. Kind of a great venue that was.
Yeah, zero pretense.
No, yeah, so much great art came out of that.
Right.
I saw so many wonderful pieces of theater competing with the dishwashing machine too. Remember that
Yeah.
dishwashing machine? Oh my God.
Yes, I used to love that. I used to just love watching the moment match the dishwasher. And I'm like, oh yeah, this shit is on.
I think Skylar just did Othello again out at Livermore, right?
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
recently,
yeah,
right? So
yeah. I saw his one man show at theater first, just before that. Yeah.
so that's great. And what when did you start studying playwriting somewhere? Did you start writing little plays, or how did that develop?
So another colleague of mine at Berkeley City College, Robin Brooks, was in Playground, and I was teaching a creative writing class. And because I hadn't been, doing any drama, I invited her to kind of lead a couple of lectures on drama writing and playwriting. And in just talking to the class, she challenged me in front of the entire class. I'm going to get instructor Smith to apply for Playground. And I took the challenge, and also it coincided with the prose exercise. I wanted to just write dialogue for 10 pages, because in my fiction, my characters would go for 35 pages without leaving their desk. Right. And when I did that first exercise, and I just saw how the story just, I was like, oh, it was like going in a automobile for the first time and
Yeah,
being
like
asked to get on a
jumping
tricycle.
off the page. Yeah.
Right. My story, my character actually met the person that they had to interact with. Yeah.
So it was a revelation.
It was a revelation. It was a revelation. And then I started studying more. I got into Playground, so I had this prompt that was coming to me every 6 months. I had this community of people who were writing. I had the support of the actors who would come and read stories that weren't selected. Yeah, it's like growth hormone right there.
Yeah, I know so many of my favorite writers who came out of Playground, and got their start there. So it's a pretty wonderful institution,
Yes, absolutely.
because so many of you have got your, sea legs, as it were, to use a little sailor metaphor there, at Playground. And that's just terrific. So you studied creative writing somewhere else, you said, at an academy, or
I went to Mills for my MFA,
in
Mills
creative
College
writing?
in creative writing in
Oh,
Oakland.
so it was in creative writing, and you were maybe more interested in novels at that time, or?
Right, prose.
Mhm. And that got you a gig at City College teaching creative writing.
Yes,
Now, do you still do that?
yes. I'm still faculty at Berkeley City.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes, it's a great department. It's a great program.
That's terrific. So that's great. That's a great connection from prose to dialogue, from prose to dialogue. I think that seems like it must be a great balance to, read so much prose from your students and see prose at work when you're thinking in dialogue. Do you
Yeah,
find that helps you, or feels?
it does. And one of the things, since I teach composition, essay writing,
Right.
and part of what I am sharing with my students in the class is that good essay writing is dialogue, is discursive, it's discourse,
Correct.
it's an academic discourse. And so you have to be attentive to how someone is hearing and what they are saying. And so doing a lot of exercises in a prose writing class where they put their arguments in dialogue prior to putting them into prose form.
Correct. That's very interesting. I hadn't thought of it quite that way, but essay writing, and I used to be in high school. I was what do they call it? It's a kind of speech where you're trying to convince somebody of something. They have contests and stuff.
For
You know
instance,
what I mean?
yeah,
Well, it's persuasive, right? You're persuading
right.
somebody of
Mhm.
something. And I used to always, I often will tell actors that they are the advocate for their character. The actor is like the defense attorney. Now, I'm
Yes.
going to talk to you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, about this young man.
Hmm.
He did something that many of you would not approve of. And yet, I want to show you what happened to him that made that happen and why you should be on his side. Right. So, what you're saying kind of rings for me in that way, that it's a good exercise to write discursive prose, which is like essay writing, because you're making a case for something.
Making a case, and it really doesn't matter. Like, the case is not made to yourself or
No,
to others who already think like you.
right.
And so you have to, and I tell my students, like, you have to organize, you have to let your audience organize your essay, because
Correct.
you have to hit on the points that they need, not the points that you like. Uh, so yeah,
That's
it's a decent exercise.
that is so interesting. I had never thought of it that way. So, in a way, it's like that, that the art of war, that you can't defeat the enemy until you
You know
kind of
them.
walk a mile in his shoes. Because if you're going to convince somebody who disagrees with you, you have to get inside of that person's head to try and understand
Mhm.
why it is they think the way they do in order to go about persuading them
Right.
that they're wrong. And that's empathy, right? It's you have to first have empathy for that person that you are then going to persuade.
Yes. Yes.
Otherwise, you would
Oh,
fail.
you would utterly fail. You might sound to yourself really good, and you might sound to your friends really good, but you have still utterly failed.
Interesting. That is
Yeah.
so interesting. I'm going to think about that connection, because I write essays too. I write a monthly Empathy
Mhm.
Gym newsletter thing that goes out to our little flock, and and I'm usually trying to persuade people of something. It's interesting. I've never been a playwright. I've never been really good at it. I'm a pretty good essay writer and a pretty good poet, but I'm just never been particularly good at playwriting. People have always laughed at my dialogue. And I don't mean laughed like that's real funny dialogue, Bill. I mean, like, do you really think people talk like that? And I go, yeah, sure, of course they do. I talk like that. What is up with you not liking, So I just like kind of went, okay. The first 3 or 4 times that happened to me, I thought, well, they're just crazy. And then I sort of started going, well,
Ah,
maybe that just is not my forte. But the ease with
mhm.
which especially in the two friends, that dialogue is just so easy and rolls off the tongue. I think just you have a knack for it.
Thank you. Thank you. Hmm. I
So
appreciate that.
let's give a huge plug coming up to the project you're working on at the Aurora Theatre.
Yes.
Tell the folks about it.
It's it's a play set in a very similar, you know, universe. It's set in Berkeley during this really global cataclysmic event, and three individuals who find themselves living in the same triplex, but have never quite given each other much time, have to come to understand themselves and try to figure their way out of, like, the shelter in place situation that they're in.
So three separate apartments in a complex.
Yes.
So it's kind of like a little no exity.
It was an early inspiration, actually.
What's that?
That was an early inspiration.
Yeah. Well, couldn't have a much. I mean, you can't ask for
Yeah.
a better inspiration than that great play.
Yes. Right. Indeed.
And it's short. It's a one act, right? I mean, it's maybe an hour, right? No,
Oh, that's a pretty
like,
intense hour. Yeah.
bam, Jean-Paul slammed that one.
Yes.
He
And so
nailed
the play, yeah, absolutely. And the play is written with me, Jonathan Spector, and Lauren Gunderson. And Josh Costello brought us in back maybe the second week of the shelter in place order.
Wow.
And just said, let's do something crazy. We see things are changing. We don't know when this is going to be over. We have the slot at the beginning of the season to put something there. Let's see if we can do something that resonates with the moment.
Yep.
That
That sounds like a good setup. It sounds like a good plan. Now I think is it just a coincidence that there are three characters and three playwrights? Is each of you sort of in charge of one of the characters, or are you just writing? Okay, so tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, and so we began
a little bit about that
because we didn't know what story we wanted to tell.
Right.
We knew we wanted to tell a story that was set in such a way that these three individuals had to, come together. And so we just started with the characters, and we just started with monologues. Who are they? And then just imagine, okay, well, this one lives here, this one lives upstairs, this one lives in the basement, and this is what's happening outside. And almost like the referee in a spar, like, go. That was Josh's command.
It's a challenge. We were talking a little earlier before we started the show about how it's more common in many of our sister art forms in the movies and television and in animation, for there to be numerous writers that have to work together. Like, I know a lot of my friends are young playwriting friends are working in Hollywood right now in the writer's room. And they send, are you still there, Cleavon?
Yes, I'm sorry. I have to, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, I was receiving a call from my dad.
Oh, no worries. We'll let you go. I'll let you go in a minute here, but in anime, they have lots of playwrights, and they go in. They put 7 or 8 of them in a room, and they won't let them out until they have an episode.
Right.
So this is a little like that, except Josh hasn't locked you up yet.
Right, and also because we were still discovering the story for a long time. And then each time we would get some grasp of the story, some other event would happen in the world that impacted the moment. Yeah. And
It's
so
like, if it ain't one thing, it's another,
if it ain't one, it's another. Yeah.
Gee.
Can't win for losing.
So is there an opening night for that? Is there a date when that project is intended to come to fruition? I mean, obviously we're kind of in an open-ended situation here, but
yes, and I apologize, I didn't have that ready for you immediately, but it's the end of October. It is the first it is the first product that is a part of the Aurora membership this season. And so it will be done in 3 acts. It's a drama, it's an audio drama. And but members will be able to download each act, at once. But then they will have 3 separate files, and they can listen to it either in one binge sitting or on 3 different sittings.
Well, it's fantastic, and so we'll make sure we help the Aurora promote that event to our audience as well. But I think it'd be interesting because that 3 acts doesn't mean there couldn't be a 4th act, a 5th act, and 6th act. Once these characters get going, I can imagine that they may have more to say. Especially
Yeah.
in a serial, you're already a little, you got
Mhm.
one act and then two acts and then three acts. So
Right. So actually, I'm in another serial project with Theater First. All of their shows this season are serials.
right, right.
Uh, yeah.
That's it's a lot of what people are doing, right? Is doing audio, doing a series of audio programs.
Right. And Josh mentioned it earlier when we decided it was going to go to audio. Um, how that really vibes with the character and the spirit of the Aurora Theater. There's a theater that is really intimate, small, and just the power of the word.
Absolutely.
And so doing this in the audio form seems to be not stepping too far from the actual physical space of Aurora.
Sure, they don't have a lot of room for like, flying in elephants or anything there because, it's a small theater.
Yes.
We tend to do a little bit more spectacle.
Yeah, like marching bands.
Yeah. Were you in the marching band?
No, I was not, but and I can't remember. I can't remember the title, but John Tracy directed, and they had the band for the football player, dancer,
Colossal.
Colossal.
Yeah,
Yes.
we had a drum corps.
Yeah, the drum corps.
We had three fantastic drummers for that show. That was I love that show so much. So how
Yes.
about one more little plug here for the Young Playwrights of Color project? Where's that
Oh,
happening?
wow.
What's that all about? And how can people help out with that?
Yeah, so Berkeley Rep has this program that they have run for, this was going to be the fourth year, the Young Writers of Color Collective. And it started with the grant from Reggie White, who pretty much everything I'm doing in the Bay Area is directly related to Reggie.
Really?
Really. The guy's only like 32 and he's like a mentor of mine. Uh, but uh, and so the intent was just to introduce more young writers of color to playwriting. Some of these, like the applicants, you have never written a play before,
Right.
but they like to write and they're great storytellers, and so they come in and Berkeley Rep is just given so much other, given a lot of resources to bringing the students in for the ground floor.
Right.
And so they are just immersed, surrounded by other playwrights and actors and directors. And then the ground floor team gives them a great deal of feedback, give them a platform to have their plays performed with the other residents of ground floor.
Awesome.
And yeah, so it's a great program, and it's a part of the School of Theater, and we're hoping to get it going back up.
Well, we hope that people will support it too.
Yes.
You know what I wish we could start up is the Young Designers of Color program.
Oh, yes. Skyline High School.
High school, yeah, because there are kids in high school that want to be designers, right? And they're putting up shows and they're maybe doing a little lighting and they're doing a little sound work and they're doing a little scenery construction and they get bit by the bug,
Right.
And then we want to have somewhere where they can kind of be given some inspiration and maybe a little pay to assist another designer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so critical to have designers of color.
We
Because
don't have enough.
right.
We just don't have enough people to fill
Right.
the need to be as representative of our community in the design world as we would like to be.
Yes.
Big challenge, I think, and I'm going to need to talk to some of my fellow artistic directors about how we could create a program like that.
Yeah. Well, I can introduce you to some community college and high school folks to partner with.
Oh yeah.
You're right. Indeed.
Well, that would be good. That would be good.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have another off-camera conversation about that project.
Yeah, that'd be powerful.
Because I've been talking to a few people about that. And I think it's something that needs to happen in the Bay Area. I know there's a Broadway project now, right? To specific take on a specific number of young designers of color in paid apprenticeship programs under some of the great designers in New York, you know. And I know we should be doing that here in the Bay Area.
Yeah, I know. I think Stephanie Johnson has taken on a couple of paid internships. I can talk to her. Yeah, another conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I think you've got some other things going on in that room that you may need to attend to.
Yeah, my daughter's it's bedtime for my daughter.
Your daughter, I saw a little hand appear there on the edge of the screen once.
Yeah. He's curious about what's going on over here.
We had Lauren Gunderson here Monday night, you know, because we were doing the Zoomlet of her two pitch and talk politics, you know. And her little boy wandered in without any clothes on in the middle of the whole event. But, you know.
Sounds right.
Hey, we children, that's what it's about.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm loving the fact that this moment has kind of broken down those walls.
Totally. Yes. It's like you got to deal with your family, you know?
Right. We're not going to pretend that we don't have children.
I hear all that screaming from the right. Get them in school, get them in school, get them in school. And what I hear is their terror, to the terror of actually having to deal with their children, you know? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just my imagination. But
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I have another set of ideas about that.
Well, that's the whole challenge, though, right? Having an 8-year-old and having to work and write and not having physical school yet, right?
I think the biggest challenge is for her in her social interactions. But for me, it's been a blessing.
Yeah.
It's been a blessing because it's like perspective. Oh, we used to just rush out of the house every morning at 8:15. And now, even though we're still rushing to get her to her schoolwork, it's not like this, I'm pushing you away from me.
Right.
You know, and she gets to see that I work, and she gets to see that I collaborate with amazing professionals like your daughter and Lauren Gunderson. And she gets to see their faces on the screen. Yeah,
the world is going to change forever, I think.
Yeah.
You know, and hopefully that's one way in which this pandemic is likely to have changed us for the better. You know, we're more integrated, families are more integrated in doing we have to do everything in the same space because we're just in there together. We just got to do it. Anyway, Cleavon, thank you so much. That was so much fun. I enjoyed it.
Yes, indeed.
Getting to know you better and helping our patrons get to know a little bit more about the art of playwriting and playwrights that are working in our community. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Yep. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. Okay. And thank you all so much for tuning in. We're really thrilled to have you for this conversation. I just wanted to let you all know that next Monday, our Zoomlet series will be presenting A Broken String by Lynn Kaufman, who is another really, really wonderful Bay Area playwright. And since you know the Zoomlets are director-driven, this particular Zoomlet will be directed by Mr. Louis Parnell, who you saw in conversation with Susie a couple weeks ago, and who has been with the San Francisco Playhouse since our very first show. He was the star of our very, very first play and a very close friend and a very wonderful director. So we hope you will all tune in for that. And then next Thursday, Susie's going to be doing her Fireside cocktail conversation with moi, which is going to be interesting. I'm going to be interviewed by my partner and wife, and who knows what questions she may ask when I'm under the eyeglass in the spotlight. So we hope you all will join us for that. Thanks again once again for visiting the Empathy Gym, for visiting with Cleavon, and we'll see you next show.